The following memo is taken from Abyssinia the Powder Barrel in the eyes of a lawyer from Austria who stayed for 2 years in Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa from 1933 to 1934. What is going on in Abyssinia? 3,000 miles from Europe, in the eastern corner of the Black Continent, there is situated the Ethiopian Empire, the only actual sovereign native state in Africa, a federal state under the feudal rule of Abyssinian emperors belonging to the fabulous dynasty of Solomon, and since 1923, a member of the League of Nations. What is that has brought this country so suddenly into the limelight of international politics and made it of such importance? From some 4 years past, the Imperial Ethiopian government at Addis Ababa has been adopting a new course in its foreign policy and in its attitude towards European and Americans. It has embarked with the close cooperation of Japan on a life and death struggle with the white race, the consequences of which are incalculable. The attack is being pushed forward beyond the borders of the Ethiopian Empire into the territories of the neighboring countries. In this struggle, the attacked are all colonial powers in Africa without exception. What we are witnessing is by no means a local frontier conflict between Abyssinia and Italy. The Italians, as the immediate neighbors of Abyssinia in her colonies of Eritrea in the north and Somaliland in the southeast, are merely called upon to be the first to take up the challenge in defense of European colonial achievements at this outpost. The Young Abyssinian movement, which is aided and abetted by the government, is systematically working up and fostering hatred for the white peoples in all sections of the population, exploiting to the full the knowledge and skill which an indulgent attitude on the part of the European races has put in their hands. The application of the European methods of education to the colored peoples is bearing tragic and dangerous fruits, more particularly in the cases in which the natives are not under the rule and control of white people but have a free hand to conceive and follow up any fatal policy to which their position is as a sovereign native state entitles them. The territory of Abyssinia, populated by some 10 to 12 million of colored inhabitants, is twice the size of Germany. It extends from East Africa on one hand to the Sudan and is bordered to the north by the Italian colony of Eritrea, on the east by French, British and Italian Somaliland, on the south by the British Crown Colony of Kenya and the British Protector of Uganda down south, and on the west by the Anglo-Egyptian Sudan. As a country lacking an outlet to the sea, Ethiopia is mainly dependent on the carrying on of its foreign trade on the Franco-Ethiopian Railway, which connects the capital Addis Ababa with the port of Djibouti in French Somaliland over a distance of not quite 500 miles. Since the Franco-Italian colonial agreement concluded in 1935 at Rome, the majority of the shares of this railway are in Italian hands. The two telegraph lines leading to Addis Ababa are also under foreign management, the one following the railway route being French and the other traversing northern Abyssinia to Asmara in Eritrea, Italian. Otherwise, the only trade routes are still the old caravan routes, which are only a small extent possible for automobile traffic, and that only during the dry season. These roads have to carry the whole of the traffic of the country. On account of the valuable products available for export, the country badly needs opening up in the economic interests both of the natives and the European colonists. The main exports are, in the first place, coffee, and then hides, fruit, furs, and gold. There is also an abundance of minerals of all kinds, from gold and platinum to the much sought after mica slate. It's even probable that coal and petroleum are to be found. For the natives speak the districts in which no fire may be lit or the earth begins to burn. Abyssinia is also a country where pepper grows, and it is the only country in which civet is obtained. What distinguishes Ethiopia from all other Central African countries is the favorable climate of the mountainous region in which the capital Addis Ababa lies. The highland portions is free from fever, malaria, mosquitoes, and the tsetse fly. The temperature is relatively low, having regard to the fact that the equator is only 5 degrees distant. It varies between 55 degrees Fahrenheit to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, and is thus ideal for white people. What has thrust Abyssinia into the forefront of everyday politics is not greed for expansion or craving for conquest, but the innate interests of the natives, economic considerations of a worldwide nature, and genuine concern for peace. The African menace. The lamentable deficiencies in the administrations of the Ethiopian Empire have hitherto proved a bar to the cultural and economic development of the country. The animosity of the ruling Abyssinian tribe, the Amharas, towards foreigners, which has been growing steadily in recent years, is becoming evidenced to a most threatening extent in all relations and dealings with foreign powers and their citizens. The contradictions, assurances issued from time to time, and the declarations published in foreign countries with a view to diverting public opinion are being constantly shown up and disproved by the open and fanatical efforts to repress and as soon as possible to get rid of the European institutions which were developed to the equal benefit both of the natives and of the white population under the Italian protectorate and later on under the rule of the eminently able Emperor Menelik II. The numerous peoples and tribes which inhabit the territory of Ethiopian state and which differ in race, language, culture, and religion from the ruling minority of the Abyssinian proper would long ago have thrown off the Abyssinian yoke if they had been given the right self-determination. Instead, they are being forcibly cut off from European influences and from the advantage that progressive colonization could confer upon the country. But the Abyssinians are planning to go much further than this, and the final aim of their policy of antagonism to the white races, in which they are relying on the cooperation of Japan, is nothing less than to act as champions of all colored peoples of Africa. The Abyssinian people are on the verge of plunge into the widest adventures without being capable either of grasping the consequence of their action or of carrying the responsibility for it. The Abyssinian Emperor Haile Selassie I, the king of the kings of Ethiopia, in a speech held to his powerful and numerous tribal chiefs assembled at Harar at the beginning of June 1935, uttered the following challenge: I am the only African emperor and the leader of all black peoples, including those still under foreign sway. We must regard all Europeans not only as foreigners but as enemies. And a few days later, in an interview accorded to the reporter of the French newspaper Le Matin, the Nugus laid stress on his good relations with Yemen, Hijaz, and the Egyptians, and said, Muhammad says in the Quran that the Ethiopians had shown him hospitality. All Muslims must therefore come to the aid of the Ethiopians in case of need. These proclamations, issued by the supreme authority in Abyssinia, are a sign to all the native peoples, including those beyond the borders of Abyssinia itself, to look upon the Nugus as their leader in the coming fight with the white races, and to gather under his banner. Utterance of such official significance amount to grave interference in the established conditions of rulership in the neighboring countries and a danger to the existence of the European colonies in Africa. The leaders of the Ethiopian Empire are faced with the necessity of taking decisions which is destined to leave its mark in the history of the world. They now have to choose between either at least fitting in with the system of European influence in Africa, willingly serving cultural progress and civilization by loyal cooperation with the white peoples, or urged on by senseless resentment and racial mania, carrying to extremes a disastrous policy which can merely exaggerate all the causes of antagonism between the colored and the white peoples, and thus lead to a poisoning of the international atmosphere to the serious detriment of civilized and peaceable progress in the world. It is the purpose of this study to draw attention to the threat involved in the growing prevalence of acts of animosity perpetrated against members of white races, and at the 11th hour to give a warning borne out by documentary evidence. For 2 years, I occupied a post which was not without its dangers as a barrister pleading before the mixed special tribunal and consular courts of the foreign powers in the Ethiopian capital, in which capacity I represented to the best of my powers the rightful interests of some 100 white people of almost all nations, and defended them against the arbitrariness of the Abyssinian government and unlawful acts of violence on the parts of native authorities. Some measures of success that I had in this fight, and the fact that I adopted the principle of keeping all the diplomatic and consular missions established at Addis Ababa, and also the Secretariat of the League of Nations at Geneva, informed as to the constantly multiplying grievances and as the growing precariousness of the position of the white people in Ethiopia, both politically and economically, caused the imperial Ethiopian government to expel me from the country in February 1934 on the grounds that I was doing prejudicial to the internal and external safety of the state. In very fact, this measure may be regarded as a recognition to my success in the fight I had been putting up for the rights of white people in Abyssinia, but at the same time, a cogent testimony of the attitude of the intentions of the native rulers who will stick at nothing to prevent dissemination of facts concerning the incredible condition of obtaining in Ethiopia the coercive administrative measures of the expulsion from the country was intended to put an end to my activities as an advocate for the white people in Ethiopia and as a political writer in Europe. It is incumbent on the competent authorities, and more particularly on the legations of the civilized nations on Abyssinia, which can spread the truth without running the risks incurred by private individuals, and can stand up for the rights of their subjects and those under their protection openly and unchecked. It's incumbent on these authorities to open the eyes of their governments to make it clear that it is high time to take a definitive stand before a movement takes a final shape under the leadership of pseudo emancipated colored people who, with the aim of attacking and destroying Western culture and civilization in its entirety. So this is the writer's in picture and attitude and what he observed as he was staying in the capital Addis Ababa during those days. And it shows that how much he hated the Ethiopian government, the Ethiopian people in general, and in particular the ruling class. And in my opinion, this documented book still is being referenced when the Europeans and in general and the Western world think about our country, Ethiopia, and how they view us, how they view the black people, how they feel African people, how they are against the success story of black Africans, the independence, the emancipation, and the economical fortitude of Ethiopians. And I perceive that what Ethiopia is facing today related to the construction of Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, related to the peace and stability of the Ethiopian state, all is rooted back to Ethiopian history, and they are challenging in the modern times the integrity, the proud history of Ethiopia. They are doing all what they can do in the name of liberalization, in the name of freedom, in the name of democracy, in the name of the rights of nations and nationalities. They brought Ethiopia and by bringing narratives such as Ethiopia will disintegrate. So all this comes from the roots of what is written almost 100 years ago by European lawyer. This Austrian lawyer has written very racist and very is not based on truth and authenticity. I challenge this book to be not authentic, not real, and Ethiopia is not what he's saying, as what he proclaims. Thank you.